In the previous video, I argued that before we count objects, we must first distinguish them. To say that there are 3 bananas, each of those bananas must be different enough to count separately, but also similar enough to count together or group it under one category. So the number 3 records the size of that collection, and we will later call that the cardinality of the collection or set. But this immediately raises a very deep question, and that is, what allows certain objects to be collected together in the first place? And this is where the idea of a set begins. So we're going to start our video talking about distinction to collection. I talked about distinction in my previous video, so if you haven't seen that, make sure to check that out first. Okay, so for now, I want you to imagine this universe possibility of objects, and we're just gonna symbolize that with the letter U. And this universe may contain numbers, shapes, people, or any other object we're considering. And at first, everything simply belongs to the same, cloud or field of possibility, this universe. But now we introduce a condition. Let's say the condition is P of X such that X is even. Okay. And this condition examines every single object X. X is just an arbitrary element or object within U in the universe and produces one of 2 answers. It's either true or false. Right? True or false. So each of the elements, X, is going to be either true or false. If X is even, then they're going to be assigned to truth or true. If they're not even, if they're odd, that means it's going to be false. Or we can characterize this element to be false, right? And this condition, as you can see, immediately creates this division of the universe, or a partition of the universe. So objects satisfying the conditions are placed on one side, and objects are not satisfying it are placed on the other, the false side. And this is why, structurally, we can interpret a set as a logical boundary. So a set is a logical boundary. And the formal definition of this condition that we were talking about, we might write it as A, which is a set X, and all of these X are going to be part of U, such that P of X is just this condition, this logical predicate, right? And this also means that X is an element of A, directly implying to P of X. So the small statement contains the entire membership rule, and membership is one of the most important things we got to talk about since we're introducing sets. So an object X inside this set A is exactly when the predicate P of X is true. So, and we already stated the P of X, this is just an example, is when X is even. Right? So, a set is not really it's not merely a container that happens to hold objects, right? Because we have cases now, since we introduced a predicate. So X is going to be either inside if P of X is true or outside, the outside region, if P of X is false. So this already creates this like geometrical distinction, right? This visual distinction. You could see it in terms of logic, geometry. Okay, so every object is tested against the same logical boundary that that the set has, right? So a set creates a distinction at a new level. The first kind of distinction separated one object from another, right? But a set introduces a second kind of distinction. So the first kind of distinction is basically where A is not the same thing as B. Okay? This is the first distinction that we have different objects, different independent objects existing somewhere. And the second kind of distinction is about the membership of this arbitrary element X, where X is an element of A, or X is not an element of A. So this is no longer merely a distinction between objects, but it's a distinction between the membership states. Membership, it's like conditions. Okay. So relative to the set A, every object in the universe receives one of two classifications. It's either a member or non-member. So the creation of a set adds this layer of logical structure to the universe. And we can make this logical boundary even more explicit by using a particular function, like we kind of did in the beginning. So for a set example, for a set, let's say, so we're talking about the set where it's part of the universe. So it's just one little region of the universe. Okay, this is A, by the way. So we define its characteristic function. We define the characteristic function of A, right? Where the universe, it's either going to be assigned to 0 or 1. Furthermore, you could also say that the characteristic function of A, of this random element, is 1 if X is an element of A, 0 if X is not an element of A. So we already create this piecewise function. Piecewise function, right? So, okay. So a singular set, which is a subset of the universe, is now became a binary classification of the universe. So every object, every element X, now receives either a 1 or 0. Here, the numbers are not counting elements, though. Okay, they're encoding the logical states or the membership conditions, where 1 refers to belongs or part of, right? An element of, and 0 refers to not belongs, not belonging, or not an element of, right? Does not belong. And even with the way we define a set, there is a deep, very deep connection between sets and logic, right? So logic is related to sets directly, actually. So a subset of U, we call that A predicate on U, and a function from U to 0, 1 are 3 ways of describing the same underlying division.